Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with John Marani again for our tarot time. Today, we are going to be looking and discovering this book that John wrote. It's called In Their Own Words, The Major Arcana of the Tarot. Now, John, first of all, why did we not know that you wrote this book? I mean, I think we've vaguely seen it, but it's like, why do the students at school not really know you wrote this book?
It's really a personal thing, not the book. I mean, the book's public, but um, I'm always trying to do more, and I feel like this book, I feel almost like I don't know, like it didn't take me that long to write, and I had so much help with it. I just haven't promoted it that much, and I don't feel bad about it. I love the book, but I just it reminds me that I haven't done the other six books that are in my head. That's
Okay.
probably why.
Well, okay, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit as a mother of 15 books. I consider books to be babies. And when you have a baby or a book, you can't just leave it in its bassinet. You must tend to the baby and you must feed the baby and you must share the baby with the world. And so, what I'm going to force upon you today is that we are going to talk about your baby for the next 45 minutes. Okay, I'm going to read the back of the book. It's short and sweet. Here it goes.
Go for it.
We're the tarot. As an ancient system of divination, some consider us enigmatic and unknowable. Looking through modern lenses, however, new tarot enthusiasts can gain a unique introduction to our essential selves, while tarot aficionados may deepen their understanding of our natures. Explore the tarot in a new way. Tales of the first time we caught a wave, our favorite bedtime story, private journal entries, and the screenplay we're writing are only a few of the secrets we wish to share with you. So it seems like on the back of the book you're speaking as if you are the cards. Is that true?
Yes, because I believe each one of the cards is a character in and of itself. So what you're dealing with for me with the tarot is you're dealing with 78 personalities. And when
Okay.
they come together, different different things happen. I always say when you pull out a deck of tarot cards, you never really know what's going to happen next. Um, Even if you have an intuitive feeling. So I started with the major arcana cards because they're the most powerful in the tarot deck, and they're usually the ones that have the most evocative imagery on them. Most people, if you show them a tarot card, if you show them like, I don't know, the Six of Wands, they kind of go, eh. But if you show them the Death card, like they've seen that, you know. And it
Interesting.
helps that movies and books have kind of pushed the major arcana a little bit more. But yeah.
So wait, is your plan? So this is the major arcana of the tarot. Are you planning to write a book about the minor arcana, or what's your plan there?
So the plan is eventually to write another four books, to write one for each of the suits. And then after that, I was considering putting together a compendium volume with all five together. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, but um, I haven't been, as you said, taking good care of this baby really,
Yeah.
because it's been out for quite a while. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it took me a long time in book publishing to realize that like maybe 10% of the battle is making the book, which is actually really hard. Making a book is really hard. And people always approach us at Moira Press and say, like, can we publish a book through Moira Press? And to be honest, it's a grueling task. And it's like, it would be like being pregnant is kind of grueling and birthing a baby is grueling. And then actually all the time it takes to like tend to the baby is also kind of grueling. I mean, it's a labor of love. I mean, we love having our kids. We love, so okay, now so for you to make another book, it would be a big task, right? And so like maybe as we celebrate this book at the Moira Press, because it's cool when you're a teacher and you actually have a book because it can be kind of the textbook to class if you want, or it can be that your students, can enjoy getting to know you even more through the book. I think we should start making sure that everyone at school knows about the book. Now, I have to ask you a weird question. You're probably gonna get mad at me on here. Okay, it's like okay. So when I look at this, I can't believe how awesome it is inside. Okay, look at all the colors and the pictures and like I'm just like I got the best deal ever on this book because it's only $18. Now, how can you have a full color book for only $18? I don't, how does that work?
it does, to be honest, it doesn't have that many pages. So I wanted it to be accessible. And so my wife Jennifer is an author also, and she's written, I want to say, 3 novels. And she's the one who did all of the artwork and all of the design. She
Okay.
is the genius behind that. So I want to make sure she gets credit here. And the idea
Thank you,
is,
Jennifer.
yes, Jen did an amazing job. And she gave me a lot of really good ideas on the size of the book and which fonts to use. Like she chose all of that.
I was surprised by the size because when I saw it online, I thought it was a small book. And sizing of books is like a really important thing. Like, look,
Yeah.
okay, let's just do a size comparison. So, like, here's the introduction to the Tetrabiblos. We always make all of our books at Moira Press. It's like 5 by 8.5 or something like that. All of them. But your book is a big book. That's a big baby.
Yeah.
So why
I
did you
wanted
choose this big size?
I wanted the bigger size because I wanted to have enough room for the images so I wouldn't have to shrink them down all that much.
Mm.
And to be honest, that was an artistic decision that Jen had a big hand in too. Oh yeah, the sun. Yeah, like that.
Oh,
I
so this is
wanted,
the page for the sun card.
mhm. Yep.
Okay, interesting.
And it's that one's done in the form of a haiku. So we decided to go that way. Jen gave me a lot of different sizes to choose from, but I wanted a bigger size, just so people would be able to see all the images. Well,
Interesting. Like, okay, so it's like it's a more kind of a more feels like a magazine than a book in some ways because of all the artwork. I know I keep showing you this, but it's just so rich that I can't stop flipping through it. Now, so it sounds like you have one page per card. Is that what's going on?
so I have one entry per card. Yes, I do.
Okay.
And each one of the cards is using its own style. Yeah, text messages.
Interesting.
So depending on what card I choose, oh, that's the chariot. Yep.
Okay.
He's the drill sergeant of the tarot, which is why it's a script from a military movie.
Okay, so it's like kind of meta. Like this one is
Yeah,
kind of military because it's a military essence card, basically.
right. Because I think of the chariot as the drill sergeant of the tarot. He's Mr. Control, essentially.
Okay.
And so each one of these cards, I selected a certain way, a certain style to express each of them. So, for example, if we're talking about the Empress is mom, and so the Empress is a recipe card. The Emperor is very much an authority figure, so his is court paperwork. Um, Temperance is about health and bringing balance, and so that's basically a doctor's visit report. Like, here are your recommendations on what to do moving forward. So each one has a very specific taste, feel, flavor, because I believe each one of those cards is has its own personality, really.
Interesting. So what is this though? Favorite book genre for each card?
Oh, so I think one of the best ways to learn the cards is to learn them through a modern lens. So I believe that there are a lot of modern images that can help people learn the cards. Now, there are some tarotists that are against this, and I don't really understand why.
Mm.
But so for example, if you were to give me a movie that would resonate with each one of the cards, like, I could probably do that for you. Like, I could probably say, okay, this movie would be this card, this movie would be that card, especially with the major arcana. And that was one of the things I considered at one point was, okay, like, what movies resonate with the Fool? Like, which ones resonate with the Magician? Which characters? Which themes? So for example, with the Fool, one of the ones that comes to mind right away is Forrest Gump. Like, that's a movie that
Uh,
he is a fool, but he isn't. Like, you know, and a lot of the reason why he's the fool is because of inexperience. And so that theme really resonates in that movie. Some of the ones that are more obvious, like the Emperor could be the Godfather. The Emperor could be, the Empire Strikes Back. Anything with Darth Vader in it would probably be good for the Emperor. With the Empress, we've got everything from, mommy dearest to, bad moms to, like, anything with mom or overly feminine dominating figures, like you could use the Empress for that. And some are easier and some are a little bit harder. But I like people to be able to learn and retain what the cards mean. And so as I go through my life, I'll often say, oh, I've had a very, death day today. And not in the sense of people dying, but that a lot of things are changing. Or I'll say, all right, I really need a day where I feel like I can regroup. So it's a temperance day. I just
Mhm.
need to go back to square one and get more balanced, Or in some ways, some days it's a world day. So for example, when I'm done a big assignment at work, it's like, okay, that's a world day. It's like, okay, I'm done with this project or this job or this role, and what's next?
Interesting. Okay, so I'm looking at some of the favorite book genres. The lovers would be romance or erotica. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, the lovers card is like literally like love and partnership or whatever. The chariot, though, war stories. That's surprising. I thought the chariot is like a guy in a chariot with two horses going forward, right? Like, how is that a war story?
So the chariot is a charioteer who is trying to control two sphinxes, actually, on the Rider-Waite,
Okay.
and he has to be incredibly strong to keep both of them moving forward in the right direction, because you can see they're kind of like this, and he's got to keep them moving straight. So he's got to be very powerful to do it. War stories comes from the fact that with the chariot often represents people and concepts where control is of vital importance. So, for example, if you're in the middle of a battle, okay, you're in the middle of a fight. You don't need your sergeant to say, "All right, let's sit around and talk about this. I need opinions on what to do next." No, the sergeant goes, "You go over there. You go over there. You do this. You do that. Let's, take care of the wounded. Let's." So it's that idea of it's a military style of leadership. When the chariot comes up, it can often represent a hard fought victory, something you really, really tried for and finally got, or the need for you to step up and say, I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling you this is how it's going to be.
Oh, interesting, interesting. So the death card, you say forensic thrillers. Now you told me it wasn't just about death. So like, is it just forensic? Well, tell me about forensic thrillers and death.
Oh yeah. Well, that card resonates with the astrological sign of Scorpio, which is very much a forensic kind of thing. And the idea with forensics is we're continuing to pull the layers off and continuing to pull the layers off. We have to see what's really down at the bottom of something. So it requires a tremendous amount of investigation. So some forensic stuff does involve death, others don't. For example, if you talk about forensic accounting, right? That's about going in and delving in. Where'd the money go? How was it spent? Finding any outlets for it, and all of that. But it still requires a deep, deep look. And the
Mhm.
death card will do that. The death card really is about taking a very hard look and seeing what is changing and what isn't.
Okay, interesting. The star card, you say, sorry, I'm tripping on this page of favorite book genres. You say the star card is science fiction. How come it's not astrology books?
Well, it could very well be astrology books too, because that card resonates with the sign Aquarius.
Okay.
So absolutely it could be, but anything otherworldly, really what I was going for. But that could be tarot books, that could be astrology books, that could be energy work books. But I only wanted to give one just so people could kind of get started. Also, in this book, one of the things that is truly unique about it is that I don't tell people what each of the cards means. I just interpret how they speak to me. And that's a huge difference. Most of the time, what you're going to get is you're going to get someone else's opinion of what the card means. And there are some wonderful tarot books out there where they tell you, hey, traditionally it means this, in practice it means this to me. And that's all well and good. But what I don't want to do is tell people I am the one who's going to tell you what the cards mean. And the reason for that is because I don't want to impose my will on the reader. I don't want the reader to go out there and say, no, well, John Marani says that's not that, so it can't possibly be that. I don't want that. I want people to think about the cards critically. I want them to experience the cards. And at the end, they have to decide what it means, not me. So this is why I give people my impressions of how I think the cards present themselves. And then it's up to the reader to decide how they feel about that card, given what I've written.
So you're basically helping a reader develop their own intuitive language with their cards. I mean, because it's like the person has to embody the meaning of the cards kind of classically, but then also there's like augury that happens on every card. It's like if depending on the question, they're like, well, I see this thing on the card that applies to the question. Like, so you're really teaching the reader how to be like a good philosopher with their cards themselves or something like that.
Yeah, I
Forgive
think
me, I'm
that's
not a tarot reader, so I don't know.
no, that's an excellent way of putting it. I don't want to impose my judgment on what a card does or doesn't mean, especially because I'm not in the reading with the reader. I'm not their client. Not that I would impose myself if I was their client anyway. When I'm the client, I tend to shut up and let the reader do their job. Um, but what's important to understand is that I want people to feel like they have their own words for the cards, that even though I teach tarot and I mentor a lot of people with the tarot, when people contact me and they say, hey, John, have you got a minute? Let me show you this reading I did and I want to know what you think. My first statement after that is, okay, but before I do, I want you to tell me what it means to you first, because I don't want anyone to think that I am right and they are wrong. Like, I don't want that. Even with 35 years experience, I can always learn something new from my students, and I have. So every once in a while, someone will throw a meaning of a tarot card at me and I'll go, oh, now that's pretty good. I like that. And I will borrow from them too. So it's more of to me, it puts us more of on an even playing field. I know my students get very nervous reading cards from me because they think, well, he's the expert. Like, what do I know? Like, well, what you know is what you've done with the cards. And I appreciate that, whether it's been 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or however long.
Well, okay, so we had this ingenious translator on this morning. She's an ASL interpreter, her name's Marlene, and like we were talking about how do you know if a translation is correct or not, and like we were talking about how there can be 10 different translations of the same thing that can all be correct, and though there are translations that are absolutely incorrect. Like for example, like the Star Spangled Banner. Like if I stood up there and signed like orange apple cherry tree instead of oh hell can you see or whatever, like that would absolutely be a wrong translation of the Star Spangled
Correct.
Banner. But there's like 10 different ways to say like oh say can you see, like in sign language, they're all poetic choices. So I think it's
Mhm.
similar with the tarot cards where like if you got like the Lover's card and you were like someone's gonna die, like
Right.
that's
Right.
wrong. That right, there are wrong interpretations of the cards, right?
I would say yes, there are. But just like when you're translating a book or you're translating someone's speech, or um, there are always, as you've said, there are going to be variations. But my question always is, has the message come through for you? Now, one of my challenges with a lot of tarot readers is that I think a lot of tarot readers water down the message to the point that they want to make it palatable for the client. In other words, they don't want to say anything bad, right? They don't want to predict anything bad, so they kind of shy away from that. But they lose a lot of they lose a lot of power in the reading because the person has basically just been told, "Oh no, it's fine, it's going to be okay." Like, and you do want to say that sometimes too, because I want to empower people, as we talked about last week. But I also believe that there are certain messages that are going to come through or should come through, no matter who's dealing with the cards. And so, yes, there are some times when someone will give me an interpretation. I'll say, that's not really how I would do it. How I would do it is X. I would probably use this theme, or I would probably go down this path. Because I have seen some that are just plain wrong. But with the tarot, it's rare. When you're translating someone's speech or you're translating a book, I have translated one book from French into English, and sometimes you're going to have a very challenging time, even with what seems like a simple concept. So in French, for example, the word is maman. Okay. Maman means mommy. It's a word that a child would say, mom, right? Mommy or mom is how you would normally translate it. Well, in this particular book by Albert Camus, this is The Stranger. Okay. And in the first paragraph, he says, Maman died today, or maybe yesterday. I don't know. That's like that's the first thing. And to translate maman into English, if you say mommy, it's too childlike because this guy's an adult and he probably wouldn't say that, right? Mom just isn't exactly right. So the translator actually kept the word maman in this particular translation that I saw
Mhm.
because he wants to avoid translation loss. And so what you need to do with the tarot, I think, is you need to make sure you're getting the right flavor and feel and message. And if you can manage to do that, you're going to do well. And I think that individual differences in tarot are very important. Like I said, I don't want people to be as sometimes as direct, I'll use that term, as I am. I tend to be a very direct tarot reader, and I don't shy away from difficult topics because I believe that's part of what I have to do is tell people if there's a potential bad future, it's my job to warn them against it, as we discussed last week. But does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, we talked this morning about something called hermeneutic tension. Have you heard of that as a translator?
Uh-uh.
It's when you have a sentence and now this does apply to tarot because I think I want to apply it to tarot for fun, but it's like when you translate a sentence and it's like how much do you make a sparse translation or how much do you flesh out the translation to give all the possible meaning or whatever? That's called hermeneutic tension. And so I think like with the tarot cards, you could have hermeneutic tension where it's like you might lay down the star card and just be like something otherworldly is happening, or you could lay it down and go on to this big diatribe of like, well, you know, this could say, like I think there is like hermeneutic tension of like how much information does the reader give, how much like it's a style choice of like how much
Yes.
or how sparse or how thick the translation of the card would be. Right.
Correct. And what I will typically do is if I'm not sure which direction to go with a particular card, I'll ask the client. If I get the star, I'll say, have you had anything really good happen recently? Is there something that you've been hoping for that has the potential to come soon? Or have you been more hopeful or have you been more spiritually connected than usual? And so I would use some of that to um, try to dig down a little deeper and find out where the client is because you don't always know when you pull a card what it means. Now, a lot of it you're going to find out in context. So if I pull a number of cards together, I can usually suss out a little bit better, but one card on its own, as you know, could have a number of different meanings. And so we will often ask the client, well, okay, here's this card. Where should we go with this? So to me, the tarot cards are people, I mean, things, entities who speak in a certain way, but also I really want people to understand that as readers, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the heart of the matter. And so we're trying to dig out and connect the cards to what's going on with the client right now.
Wait, can you get out your cards right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to see this in action. Okay, so the inquiry is how can we birth abundance daily at the Moira Press?
All right.
I'm checking for hermeneutic tension.
Okay.
I just think it's fun to make you pull a card sometimes.
These.
It's like making the show pony like do its act or whatever.
That's all right. Hey, you know what? Okay, so the first card I pulled was the Ace of Swords. So the Ace of Swords typically represents the beginnings of projects. They can be electronic projects, they can be teaching projects, they can be paperwork projects, but it's the air element. So one of the ways that we can birth new projects may be for us to start doing what we're doing, this show being part of it, but also it could be, hey, maybe people collaborate at the Moira Press and we write a book together.
Oh,
Maybe it's an astrology and tarot compendium all as one. I mean, we could do something like that. But the Ace of Swords says we're at the very beginnings of all of this. And so because the Moira Press has such an airy element. I mean, it is what we do is all air when it comes to teaching and listening and all of that. That's all very much an air topic. So we're very much the beginning of helping the Moira Press grow and birthing new projects. So with this, I would expect in the next 6 months that there's going to be quite a few new things coming along.
Wow. So, okay, wait, am I, as the receiver of the card, am I allowed to put any meaning on the card as well?
Sure, go for it.
Well, okay, so I really like that. And it was like maybe it means that students start birthing projects with one another. Because, a lot of what I got out of astrology school was projects I did with people from astrology school, like Kenneth Miller, he's a Vedic astrologer, and he and I worked for years doing projects after we went to Kepler. Like, so could it be that we have abundance every day at the Moy Press because students start doing projects together? Could the card mean that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, okay, interesting. Okay, I like that. That was fun. Okay, let's go on. Okay, what? There's a whole page of favorite cocktails per the card.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna
There
look.
are there are a couple of pages in there. There are a couple of pages in there like that. Favorite movie, favorite cocktails, just because if you're thinking of them like a person, every person has a personality, and these cards, each of them has a personality.
Okay, with the lovers, their cocktail is honey, saffron, and a ginger champagne cocktail. So why is
Mhm.
that?
So the idea with that particular cocktail is that the lovers represents choices. The lovers represents important choices, but also the lovers resonates with the sign of Gemini. And so you can see that that's a more complex drink than a lot of them. And so that's part of the reason. But also with the honey and saffron, there's definitely a sweetness, and that can certainly be the idea of the lovers in the sense that with the lovers, we choose our own belief system and we choose who we spend our lives with. So the lovers in and of itself is not, and it's not honestly a great card for love itself. It can be the deepening of a love that's already there. On the surface, it's about choice. It's about who we choose to spend our lives with. Our domestic lives, our intimate lives, our personal lives. And so when the lovers comes up, it often has to do with what we choose. And so, like I said, that drink is something that's very, very specific. And so someone would really have to seek that out and say, no, 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 this is exactly the thing I want. So that's one of the reasons why we went with that.
Interesting. Okay. Death is a tequila shot. Why is that?
Because I feel like everybody at some point in their lives is likely going to do a tequila shot, whether it's their first and last, or whether it's the first of many.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh, okay.
tequila is a pretty serious alcohol. And I also thought about the fact that a lot of times there's a worm at the bottom, as
Okay.
well, and it's a dead thing. So I'm like, okay, that tends to work.
Interesting. Okay, now I'm gonna pull a card for you.
Oh, excellent.
And you can be my tarot teacher. Okay. So tell
All
me how
right.
I do.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, give me an inquiry.
All right. So I would like to know how my next job assignment is going to go between now and Christmas.
Oh my God. God, this is tougher than I thought it was gonna be. I don't know anything about the cards. I haven't been to tarot class at the Moira Press. Okay. I'm just gonna use augury. I'm just gonna see what happens on the card. Okay.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
the question is how, wait, what's the question again?
How will my first 4 months of work in my new job go?
Oh man, oh man. I pulled the sun. I pulled it's a really good card,
Uh,
luckily, so I don't have to deal with the tension over lying about a bad future or sugarcoating the bad future. I'm just gonna say, I'm guessing from what I see on this card that your job is gonna go really well. You're gonna is this a card have to do with Leo or the sun or
the
okay.
sun as a planet, yes.
Okay, so we would say that this is going to highlight you with a new advancement to your identity. You're going to feel developed as a human. You're going to feel that you got to incarnate even further into your highest potential. Pluto is squaring your sun by transit. So this is just a further evolution of your identity as a human, and in your current incarnation. Oh God, I suck at this.
No, it was really good. It was really good. And you know my chart, so you brought my chart into it as well. You
Wait, is
know,
that allowed? Are you allowed to do that during a tarot reading?
who makes the rules?
Well, someone makes the rules. I mean, there's got to be some rules around here. Can't.
Listen, I feel like that was perfect. You happen to know my chart. And what I will do sometimes is if I have a client who is both an astrology client and a tarot client, and I know their chart pretty well, I will make remarks about their chart too.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
that's perfectly acceptable. Now, the other interesting tidbit that I'll throw out there is that I am also in the next 4 months having a solar return.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
but the idea is that, I mean, if you talk about background, for me, for a very, very long time, I've been looking for a different job in where I work at work. And the sun is the perfect thing. The sun basically says, you can do no wrong. The sun is out and everything is clear. Whereas in my work life over the past few years, clarity has not been the norm. So what you said is exactly right, but I would add the solar return. And I would say that the sun dispels any doubt or clouds. So if I had any doubt about how I was doing, or I said, I don't really know, you would have said exactly the right thing. Like, you don't have to doubt anything. You're going to do rock star well.
Yeah, I definitely thought that when I saw that card that you were going to have a good experience. Like that definitely, like it would have been a wrong translation if I was like, it's going bad. It's going bad because that card was obviously good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And you got one of the cards in the tarot that has almost no negative meanings to it. I mean,
yeah.
in all my years of work, the sun only really means something negative if it is dispelling illusions that the person has had and is chained to. And then the person doesn't know what to do because they're like, this is not what I thought at all. But that's a rarity. Doesn't happen often.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to rando open up to another page of the book.
Go for it.
Okay, so this is, oh, I see. So on the top right hand of the corner, or no, the top of the page, it says what card it's like this says Emperor, this says
Yep.
Empress or something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna
Mhm.
read from the Emperor page. I see it's from the desk of the Emperor, and it's this judicial page like you were talking about. And okay,
Yep.
so it says summary of findings. Having read all the testimony and materials placed before me, I, the Honorable Emperor, make the following finding. On the charge of 3 counts of aggravated overspending with a credit card, the defendant is found guilty. On the charge of not planning for life in general, the defendant is found guilty. On the charge of 2 counts of lacking ambition, the defendant is found guilty. On the charge of 10 counts of not listening to your father, who obviously knows best, the defendant is found guilty. On the charge of 5 counts of immature emotional displays, to include passive aggressive behavior, the defendant is found guilty. I pronounce my sentence, which should stand on record, that the defendant set up a monthly budget and spend only in cash for a period of 1 year. That the defendant sit down with a career counselor to discuss options for moving out of the dead-end job. That the defendant listen to the father's counsel carefully before choosing to dismiss it. Okay, wait a second. So, are you saying that the emperor is I thought the emperor was just a dude, like he was just a man.
Well, he is, but I call him the man with the plan.
Okay.
He's the structure guy. He's
Okay.
the guy who says, this is how you need to structure your life to be successful. So the emperor and the empress are twinned. So the empress is the one who says, come to me. I'm going to nurture you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you have everything you need. I'm going to accept you as you are. The emperor says, I'm going to make you better. And I'm going to make you better because I'm going to give you the structure to do that. And if you do not do that, then you're going to suffer the consequences for that.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so that's why there's all these plans in place to fix the problem because it's like you
Mhm.
got a problem, now you need a plan. You got a problem. So it just seems like as a tarot reader, you're learning philosophical lessons from each card. Like Do you think becoming a tarot reader just makes a person better in life?
I don't know that I would go that far, and I will tell you why. Because I have met some tarot readers whose lives are a complete and total mess. So I
Interesting.
don't, so generally I would say no. However, what I do think is that if people take the cards and the message of the cards to heart, and they have an honest look at themselves, and we can all be better, we can all improve, right? But if you get a message and you really feel like that message hits you a certain way, then you do something about it.
Hmm.
This is, again, as we talked last week about the idea that this is a snapshot in time. And so if I pull something that strikes a nerve with a client, it was supposed to. And the question is what the client chooses to do with it after that. So when the emperor comes along, he basically says, do you have a plan? Because if you don't have a plan, I have a plan, and you're probably not going to like mine. It's it's much more structured, and some people really need that. Now, some people do very well without it. But what's also interesting with the emperor is that he represents men who are older, men who are authority figures, men who are leaders, men of a certain stature. And so when I do tarot readings for love and people are attracted to men and that card comes up, I will often say, you need to look for men who are more mature, more established, who have a little bit more gravitas, if you will, who are a little bit more serious about life. That doesn't mean that they have to be wealthy. It doesn't mean they have to be powerful, but it means that they have to, generally speaking, have their lives together. You
Mm.
know, they have to have a plan.
I can see how the meaning of each card, like you have to kind of internalize it, and then it depends on the inquiry. Like if we asked that question about abundance of and the Moira Press earlier, and the Emperor came up, then you'd say like older men are going to help, bring abundance to the Moira Press or something like that, right? Right, because like that
Mhm.
you would, or maybe you would say, there needs to be a plan set in place that, like so.
Yeah.
It, I see
Or,
where.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Or in the case of, you have the cards in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you look up the Emperor, you're going to see rams on it. It's actually a card that resonates with the sign Aries.
Okay.
In the Rider-Waite Smith, the tarot, the throne of the tarot has four rams heads on it. So you might see them on that deck. I know which deck you have, and I haven't seen that one in a while, but um,
What number is the Emperor?
that's four. That's four of the
Four.
majors.
Okay. Well, so how do you know which meaning to bring up when is it you just go with your kind of intuition, or is it just like a
Mhm.
weaving of a story with, sorry I'm such a noob at this. I'm not the tarot teacher. I'm not the tarot professor at the school. That's for sure.
So the answer to your both questions is yes. So yes, there is an intuitive way to go about it, and I certainly will see what I pick up from the person. Hey, there you go. I'm seeing if there's any rams on that card. There may not be, but that card is the card that represents the sign Aries. So it could, one of the interpretations could be, if we got it for the, oh, there you go. Yep, top left. Great. Um, the
It just
Moira Press, you could say exactly what you did, which is yes, potentially older men might have a great influence over the Moira Press. It could be the Moira Press has a plan or needs to execute the plan it has, needs to rethink the plan, or it could be, hey, you know what? If we don't execute this plan, there are going to be consequences that we're not going to like.
mm,
Or it also could be a timing thing. A lot of times with astrology and tarot, we use it for timing. So I might say, hey, do you know of any opportunities that are coming next spring? Like when you have the Aries ingress, like, you
oh,
know,
interesting.
that might be a timing factor. So we can look at it a whole bunch of different ways to answer your question.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I want to address the idea that tarot is for entertainment only. Like, okay, like I want to say something about this. Same with astrology. It's like is it for entertainment only? Like I disagree with that statement, the only part, because it's like it is entertaining. Like it actually fights what we call existential boredom, which is like what am I doing with my life? What's the future hold? Like what
Mhm.
like so like now I can think about the students starting projects at the Moira Press, and I can think, oh, okay, well, what projects can we have students start, or what have you, or like that gives us something to think about here in the future. But that is entertaining, but it's not entertainment only. It kind of creates a brighter future if we have a reader who is adept at weaving a future that's, I'm not saying it's Pollyanna, but it's a good future. Like you're helping weave a good future. Even if you pull a hard card, you want to help weave that into a good future. But it's not for entertainment only. But I don't know. Do you
No.
think tarot's entertaining?
I I am constantly entertained by tarot. Constantly. I think I think it is entertaining. However, I do think that there's a serious part of the tarot that people need to address, and it's that hard philosophical. So here's a story from my background. So I read when I was, oh God, I had only been a reader for 13 or 14 years, but I wasn't reading professionally yet. And I was on a business trip in New England, and my family came to visit. So they spent the day with me. Well, one of the things that happened that day was that my little sister asked me to read cards for her. So I pulled cards, and I was drawing cards, and there was a pile in this particular layout. The layout I was using was called the Celtic Cross. And the Celtic Cross is a pile called Effects of Others on You. And so when I pulled that card, I pulled the first card, and it was the Five of Cups. And then the next card was Death. And then the next card was a page, which represents a younger or immature male. Okay. So I saw that. So I knew that wasn't my sister. And the Five of Cups is a card of tremendous loss and grief. It could be through a death, it could be for other reasons, but it's a card of anguish and loss. Okay. The death card, that's pretty obvious. It represents something ending, it represents an evolution, a transition. And then as I went further down the pile, I pulled a young male. And it was, and the page can represent a young person, gender aside. Um, Excuse me, but in this case, it represented a male. And
Mm-hmm.
at first, I thought it was my brother. And I was like, oh, I hope that's not him. Because I was really convinced that someone was going to pass away. And I didn't know who it was. So, and my sister was like, okay, that's creepy. Let's just move on. So we finished the reading. About 6 weeks later, I was on a business trip on the West Coast, and my cell phone rings, and it's my sister. And she said, Alan died today. And I said, I didn't know who Alan was. Turns out it was an ex-boyfriend that didn't want to marry her.
Mm.
And so she was absolutely devastated because Alan was a paramedic, but he also liked to ride his motorcycle without a helmet.
Mm.
And he got in an accident and he died in the
Mm-hmm.
accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I had completely forgotten about the reading. I have a kind of a mental delete key, I call it, that that information is not for me. So I delete it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then she said to me, wow, that tarot reading was pretty creepy, huh? And in the middle of the airport, I just stopped and went white and I almost dropped my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, the idea that tarot is entertainment alone was gone, completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think about it that way before anyway, but at that point, I'm like, okay, this stuff is pretty serious now. And
Well,
that's
and
the,
I don't think that I mean, I don't know, just as a future, I deal with the future all the time in astrology. It's like I know about predictions. I know about predictions coming true and not coming true. And it's like, I don't necessarily think of that tarot reading as predicting that death or even causing that death. Like to me, it's like that possibility came up in the reading, and then because a death happened, like now we can trace it back to that reading, and it's like the death could have equally not have happened, and then the reading could have
correct.
just gone away, but I do think this is where it is entertaining of just like noticing like, oh, that reading did kind of speak to death and now it's happening. So it kind of is like a like ooh, but I don't know, even the act of reading a tarot card makes things like that allowed in
Absolutely. And I think what people have to understand again is that this is a snapshot in time that we're talking about.
mhm.
It is not a definite future. It is a snapshot in time. And you got to understand, this is a time when all of the conditions happen to be correct.
Right.
And even when things go badly and I see the potential for them and then they do go badly with clients, I always feel bad. Like I'm always like I'm sorry. I'm sorry it came out that way. And
Yeah.
most of the time my clients will say, "You know what? At least you told me that was the potential." And so
Yeah.
I was able to prepare or be ready for it.
Yeah, well, our time is up, so we do have to wrap up. But I will say, yeah, tarot seems like really good for people who like the horror genre. It's like, if you don't like the horror genre of life, then pull some angel cards and like pull cards that are all posicore and like. But if you like the like kind of like, ooh, what could happen, like then tarot's great for you. And like, I mean, I think. Yeah, I don't think it would have lasted thousands of years if it wasn't compelling. Like it's definitely compelling, and we are having a ball with it at the Moira Press. So, do you mind if we refer to your book for the next few weeks in our show? Because I like to
Not
read
at
like
all.
a page or two and like trip on that card and learn something. It's really fun.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Happy and appreciative of you repping the book. Um, it's one of those things where sometimes I kind of forget about my baby, if you will.
John,
Um,
we're gonna
I
fix
know.
that because I'm a mom and I'm horrified that your baby has been lying in a room alone, having failure to thrive. I
Oh,
I am going to be the mother to this baby now. Like I've had enough. What
point
kind of
taken.
father are you? I'm gonna pull ten cards about it. No, I'm just kidding. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. Remember, there's tarot classes every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30. You can hop in anytime. As you can see, John is a theoretician to the max. Like, if you want to argue with the tarot professor, if you want to get along, whatever you want to do, like this
Yep.
is a place for you to have a discourse about tarot. We can handle anything you got. So, why?
Yep.
Come visit John at the Tarot, Moira Press Tarot track. All
Yep. We'd love to have you. We love new students. So welcome and come on in.
right. All right. Bye, John. Gotta stop the recording.